Hey everybody! Alright, let's talk about the final project. You are tasked with designing a retro style poster using a lot of colors, the pen tool, and a ton of blending modes. Okay, so I've created this Pinterest board as inspiration and I've linked it into the resources section for this class. And you can see here that we have a lot of really retro style abstract typographic posters and prints here. And you are welcome to just take one of these and try to recreate it or create your own. For the purpose of this class and this tutorial, I am going to try to recreate one of these other posters. So let's get going. I think I want to recreate this poster right here. And in order to do so, I need to first save this poster to my desktop. So I'm just going to drag and drop it. And now let's open up Photoshop. I'm creating a new Photoshop document here, and let's just say that I want to make it 800 pixels wide by 1200 pixels tall because I'm creating a poster and that's kind of a common dimension. So let's name this Retro Poster. Okay, so here's our poster. I'll press F to go into full screen mode, and now let's zoom in just a little bit and let's paste in our retro poster that we're going to be recreating. So we'll go File, Place Embedded, because we want to embed that poster on in, and then Place. Okay, so it's quite a bit smaller, so I'm just going to stretch it out all the way by holding down Shift while I resize, just so that I can see it a little bit better in context of my own poster, and I'm going to move it down to the bottom. Okay, so something that I'm going to do is I'm going to be tracing every object in here, every little shape and color. So I want to kind of make sure that this poster layer stays put. So I'm going to actually lock it. First I'll name it poster, and now I'm going to make sure it's selected and lock. Okay, so now this layer is locked and I can start creating new layers on top of it. So let's start off with our first shape. I'm going to start off with this wine glass type shape here, and to do that I will be making a shape with a pen tool. So I'll press P to grab the pen tool, or I'll just select it here and make sure that this is set off of path and onto shape. Alright, so now I'm just going to create this shape here. So let's do this. And as you'll notice, as I'm tracing this shape, it's creating the shape for me, which is kind of a challenge because at some points it's hard to see, and as I go on down through my shape, you'll notice that as well. And I'm just creating little curves. See how I can't really quite see my shape anymore? And that's okay for this project. We're not being perfectionists. I just want to get the general gist of the wine glass ready to go. Okay, so I've finished creating the shape for my wine glass, but now I need to sample that real wine glass color. So I will hide this so that I can see the shape underneath, and I will go onto my purple wine glass shape that I just made, double click to bring up the color picker, and I'll go off of my color picker to bring up that eyedropper tool, and I'll sample the color until I find my favorite version of it over here. And this looks really nice. So let's show that wine glass, and it looks great, perfect, wonderful. So let's rename this Coral Wine Glass. Wonderful. Okay, so let's move on to the other shapes. Create a new layer first, and I'm going to just go downward. So I'll start with this purple one and move my way down. So let's bring up our pen tool again, make sure it's on shape, and now I'll just trace this shape. And you can see these aren't perfect rectangles, they're kind of wonky with a little bit of curvature to them, which I quite like. So I'm going to kind of make sure that I'm adding little bits of curvature along the way. So let's rename this purple rectangle, and let's hide it and make a new layer and move on to blue. Okay, pen tool is selected, it's on shape. Now let's make this blue layer. There's a little bit of a curve right there, and then we'll just go across here. There's another curve, just slightly, and then we'll finish that connection. And let's title this Blue Rectangle. And again, it's not quite blue, so let's hide it and double click and then select that proper blue color. I think the purple is actually almost there. If you want to resample, go ahead. Let's just get that right purple color that we like. I kind of like this color. Okay, so we have blue, we have purple, and we have the coral wine glass. So up next looks to be the yellow rectangle. So let's make a new layer and start tracing this yellow rectangle like so. There's a little bit of a curve, which I really enjoy. It helps give the imperfection of the retro poster that I really like. Okay, so let's name this yellow rectangle. Hide it and then select the color. That's great. Okay, so now it's on to these ship shapes here, this sailboat. And to do these, I'm going to zoom in a bit by pressing Z and clicking. Perfect. So I'll create a new layer for each of these triangles, and these should go pretty fast. When I grab my pen tool, I'll just make these triangles real quickly. They don't need to be perfect. They do need to be this off-white color though, so I'll sample that color. And this is right white triangle. Let's hide that. Here's the next white triangle. Double click the color, select that off-white color again, name it left white triangle. Hide it, new layer, pen tool is selected. Here's our red triangle. Perfect, let's name this red triangle. And then sample the red color. Up to you whether you think sampling this red, the dark red, or the lighter red is good. I'm going to select the lighter red for now. That might change later. Last triangle. Let's create this last triangle together, and you see this one's a little bit more curved, which is fine. If you are unsure of how to use the pen tool because you didn't take the previous class, I highly recommend you go back and take the class that is on the pen tool. Sample that red color again. Okay, so we have all of our shapes ready to go. They're all in here. I'll show you all of them, but obviously they look nothing like the poster. So let's do a little work to make sure that they end up looking just like the poster. The real question here is, how do we get our colors to lay over one another like they do in the poster? And we can do that exactly with blending modes. Alright, so as I mentioned before, the blending mode you need to know for this project is multiply. So if we have all of our layers selected, oops, I forgot to name this layer. Let's name this layer bottom red triangle. Okay, so let's select all of our layers and go blending modes, multiply, and you can see they're already laying over. The problem is that I'm now getting most of the poster below it showing, so I really want to make sure that that's not happening. So in between the poster and all of our shapes, I'm going to create a new fill layer. By doing that, I click on the black and white cookie and do solid color, and then I just pick a random color for now. I'm going to make sure that it needs to be the same color as that background in the poster. So I'll hide it, double click on the color, and then sample the color from the poster below. Perfect, so now it's the right color. And now I'll zoom out. You can see all of my colors laying on top of one another. The one crucial thing that we're missing though is that, let me hide all these layers, is this circle that's cut out of the wine glass. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so we have our wine glass layer. Let's select it, and then let's grab the circle elliptical marquee tool. Okay, this tool will allow us to create our circle right on top of the other circle with this marching ants line. Okay, so I'm holding down shift while I'm clicking and dragging my circle to make sure that it's a perfect circle. And the crucial thing to know here is that, see how the circle isn't exactly right on top of the actual circle in the original poster? I don't know how to do that exactly without messing everything up and starting over. In order to do this, you just need to hold down spacebar while you're doing everything else, okay? So I'm clicking and dragging while holding shift, and then also pressing spacebar intermittently to move it around. And it's a tricky combination of learning when to press spacebar and when to not. And it's definitely something that I highly recommend that you do on your own and practice with a little bit, because it is a little bit finicky. Okay, when I finally have the circle over that other circle wine glass, let's let go. And now we have our marching ants right on top. So the next step is to add a mask. And before with masks, we would just click the mask button and it would just show us what's in the circle. But we don't want that. We want the exact opposite. We want it to show us everything else except for what's in the circle on this coral wine glass layer. In order to do that, it's quite simple and it just requires one click. Rather than just simply clicking the mask button down here, we hold down Alt Option and then we click. Again, we hold down Alt Option, same button, and then we click the mask. And as you can see, it is just masked out what was inside of the circle rather than everything except for what's out inside of the circle, which it normally does. So rather than just pressing that mask button, we hold down Alt Option and then we click. Very easy. I think that's pretty good for now. What do you guys think? I think it's time to move on to typography. Okay, so first we need to make sure that we can kind of see the typography from our original poster underneath. So I'll go to this color fill layer and I'll bump down the opacity just so that I can see enough of the typography to make it matter. So let's start out by just typing. So I'll click T to bring up my type tool and then click anywhere on the canvas where you want to type. And I'll start typing what it says. I'll type Eastern and North Eastern England. Great. Okay, well, the first problem is that the font is purple and the font is nowhere near close to the one in the poster. Now, the one in the poster is an older font, probably from mid-century, and a font that I know that was really popular that looks similar is Helvetica. And I'm sure you've heard of Helvetica and seen it before. I have Helvetica on my computer. You should too. Let's make it bold because this looks pretty bold. And also, this is much larger, so let's start bumping down the font size. Let's try 18. That's too small, so let's go to maybe 26, something in between. That looks perfect. Now, our letter spacing is a little bit wider than it is here. They're kind of touching each other a little more. So let's change this from what I have at 100. Let's try 0. We'll lay it on top. That looks pretty good, but the letter spacing is a little further apart in there, so let's change this to maybe 25. That's a little too much, so let's go 20, and I'll call it a day on that. I think that looks really nice. But now we need to change it from purple to the color that's actually in the poster, so I'll hide my color fill layer, and then go with color, and then sample the color from the poster. Perfect. Okay, so now I can lay my text by clicking the text layer in my layers window and move it on over on top of theirs. And again, I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to get it really perfect. Great, so let's move on to 1961 here. So I'll press T to bring up my type tool, or press over here, click anywhere on my canvas and just type 1961. Okay, so there's something new we can do here, and that's just pressing Command T to bring up that bounding box, transform, and hold down Shift while we make it bigger. And I don't have the exact same font as they're using, but this is close enough for purposes of this class. So I'll just lay this over, use my arrow keys to make it perfect, and that's good for now, right? Okay, so that's the general gist of what we're doing here. I would like for you to go ahead and lay your own text over your own images if you're recreating an original retro poster or if you're creating your own. You can see the example of what my finished product looks like on the class info page, the main page for the class on Skillshare. And you can kind of see how I did that. I just continue to lay text over this image here like so. And then once I'm finally done, I can bump that back up to 100%. I will continue to add the rest of the text onto this poster and then I'll be right back. Alright, look where I'm at. I added all the text to my poster and now I just need to bump up the opacity back on my fill layer and there we have the poster. The one thing that we are missing though is that gritty sort of texture that older posters seem to have. And in order to do that, we can add patterns on top of numerous of our layers, if not all of our layers in fact. And in order to find patterns, I like to go to one specific site called subtlepatterns.com. So Subtle Patterns has hundreds of beautiful seamless patterns that you can use in Photoshop. So for this project, I think I would naturally just type paper, search for paper textures. And here we have quite a few paper textures. I really like this textured paper one. And just so you know, all of these are free and you can download as many or as few of them as you want. So I've already downloaded this and have it on my desktop. So let's minimize our browser and go back into Photoshop and let's start applying this pattern. So first of all, I'd like to apply it to our fill layer. I'm going to zoom in so that we can really see it. So I will double click on the fill layer, open up our layer styles and go into pattern overlay, okay? And there's our disgusting bubbles that we used previously in a different class. Let's try loading a new pattern though. That's really important. because our new paper pattern isn't quite here yet. So we first need to be able to load our pattern before we can actually apply it. So let's start by doing that. In order to load my pattern, I need to have the textured paper pattern file ready to go. Here it is. This is what I downloaded from that website, textured paper. I just need to drag this down and open it up into Photoshop. So here is our pattern, and now what I need to do is define it as a pattern. So in order to do this, I just go to Edit, Define Pattern. And now I can name it if I'd like. I can name this Paper Texture. And that's all good. Now it's ready to go. So let's go back over to our retro poster. On our color fill, I have the pattern overlay applied. I can just double click on that pattern overlay and reselect the pattern. Your new loaded pattern always shows up at the very end, and there it is. But it's not quite the right color anymore, so I kind of need to play with some blending modes to find the right blending mode for this project. And again, I really like Multiply for this because it still brought out that off-white texture of our original color fill with the new pattern. And again, you can just mess with the opacity to try to find the right balance for you. I think I like about 75% opacity for this and set on Multiply. Okay, so that's great for the background. It looks really nice, but I kind of do want to fill it into the other colors and layers. And in order to do that, I just have to apply this pattern overlay to the other colors and shapes. Okay, so let's do that now. First of all, let's move all of our text into a group. I'll click on this Create a New Group button here and put text. And then I will select everything that is text and drag it into that group. This way, we can really just focus on our color fill and our shapes. And let's put our text at the very top so that our color fill can be even closer to our shapes. Okay, so this is the order that I need them to be in. And this isn't mandatory at all. This is just how I like to work. In order to apply our pattern from our color fill to our shapes, here's what we do. We simply have to click on this FX here. Do you know that the FX stands for the layer styles? It just means that you have effects applied to your layer. This just means that you have some layer styles and layer effects on those layers, okay? So we just need to copy these effects onto our other shapes. And in order to do that, I hold down Alt Option and then click and drag and let go onto my next shape. Again, hold down Alt Option, click, drag onto the next shape and let go. Hold down Alt Option, click, drag, let go. And I'll keep doing that over and over on all of my shapes. And look at that. Now we have a nice textured aesthetic going on with our poster, and it really is starting to look very retro. I could also apply these effects to the text itself, but whenever you're dealing with really dark things, you kind of can't see the pattern overlay as well. I will apply it anyway, just so that you can see me applying it and see what it looks like. Couldn't hurt, right? Okay, so it is applied now. And again, you really can't see it. If you had lighter text on your design, then you probably would be able to see it. Okay, that's it for the final project. I can't wait to see what you guys do. Again, with all the other classes in this series, please upload your final projects onto Skillshare. I will be checking them frequently and I can't wait to see them. I'm really excited to see what you come up with, to see if you come up with your original compositions or if you choose to recreate an original retro poster yourself. Along the way, if you have any questions, please post them to the class Q&A discussion feed. I'll take a look and try to answer your questions when I can, but when I can't, if you could please just check that as well and answer your classmates' questions. It would be really helpful to everybody. It's really nice to have such a fostering community in this class, and I just really admire all of my classmates that I've had and my students that I've had that have given feedback on projects and answered my own questions. All right, so it's on to the next class. Thank you so much.